Hey, this is Travis from Providence Reformed Church, and just wanted to share some stuff with you from my daily Bible reading that I hope is an encouragement to you and your soul. In Genesis 25, we have an interesting little passage. It tells us of the death of Abraham, and it tells us that his two sons, Ishmael and Isaac, buried him in the cave at Machpelah. And that's one of those kinds of details that I think we often pass over and say, great, there's a factoid, I'm going to move on and read till I find something interesting. But here's something to think about. During his life, when Abraham followed God, the Lord made a promise to him that Abraham and his descendants would inherit the land that Abraham was sojourning in. But Abraham never owned any bit of that land, except for the part that had that cave that he bought to bury his wife. And there at the end of his life in Genesis 25, his sons buried him there. If you look at the book of Hebrews chapter 11, speaking of Abraham and speaking of people like Abraham, it says that through faith, these people looked forward to a city that had foundations, whose designer and builder is God. Abraham never had the promised land. He never owned any of it except for a tiny burial plot. But Abraham was looking forward in faith, believing that God one day would establish him in a great city. Not something like a tent that is picked up and moved, but a city with foundations. And it's a city that would come because God would be totally faithful to his promises. And now we know that Abraham has experienced that and is still looking forward to experiencing that, because it's all fulfilled in Jesus, and it'll all be utterly and finally completed at the return of Jesus. So even though he only got a tiny piece, Abraham actually knew that God was going to be faithful and fulfill the promise completely. Here we are in a world that doesn't look the way we want it to look. We, like Abraham, need to look forward to that beautiful day to come when Christ returns and fulfills all of God's promises. It may seem like we only have a little bit of square foot of the promises that God's given us, but God will fulfill it all. I'm Travis from Providence Reformed Church, and I hope that encourages your soul.